Some other examples of big capital expenditures to avoid, particularly in the early stages, would be something like paying a PR agency a retainer of $5,000 per month. Don't get me wrong. I think PR is a great way to generate awareness very quickly. Maybe you get a big funding round and you really want to get attention from potential partners and customers. But when you're in startup mode, $5,000 a month is a lot of money. I mean, that's a full-time employee that you could have constantly doing stuff for you 8 hours a day. So sinking $5,000 into retainer that may potentially lead to future customers down the road, probably not the most direct way to get customers now. So other examples that I consider sunk capital expenditures, and there may be exceptions to this, but in general, one of the most common mistakes I see is just way too much focus on what I would call inbound content marketing, or kind of the idea that your startup needs to be a journalistic entity. Your startup, unless you're in the publicity industry or you're in the business of creating a magazine, chances are your company is not going to be as effective at generating content as people that are actually doing that as their job. So for example, if you're selling software, you're not in the business of creating newspaper articles. If you're selling widgets on Amazon, that's not your game. You're not a fashion magazine. So let's avoid some of that inbound content marketing stuff because it's too indirect, takes too much time. It's a great investment if you want to dabble in it and build something. But when I'm in startup mode, I'm interested in getting money. I'm interested in getting customers, and I'm interested in getting them this month or next month, this quarter, not 1 year down the road. Because we're in survival mode, we're in pivot mode. Let's get results. Let's see what doesn't get results so we can pivot quickly. Can't do that when you're investing too much time in building a content generating machine. So for example, common advice out there, write lots of blog articles. That takes a lot of time. And if it doesn't take a lot of time, it's going to take a lot of money. So for example, let's say you pay a writer $500 to do a blog post that may generate search engine results. Well, you're probably not going to get much results with a single blog article. But I can guarantee you sink $500 into LinkedIn ads, into Google ads, into Facebook ads, and do it correctly, you're going to get a result. Okay, maybe in the beginning you won't be profitable because you targeted the wrong people or you bid too high, but you're going to get results. With a blog, it's hit or miss. You don't know that blog is even going to break even in terms of the amount of time, the amount of money you invested in. Other examples, podcasts. People say you should start a podcast. Yeah, that's great. If you're in it for the long haul, you're planning to be around for 5 years, you know what your focus is, build a podcast, build a following. But I can tell you from the get-go that is not going to get you results. Now, I'm going to talk about some strategies later that can get results, which is borrowing credibility from people that have already done these things like blogs and podcasts. But from the beginning, unless that's your business, your core business is, I'm going to run a podcast, I'm going to run a YouTube channel, don't do it, at least not in the beginning. Okay, YouTube channels, another example. Yes, you can make money from YouTube channels. Yes, you can build your brand on YouTube. Yes, it's going to help your credibility and it's going to lubricate the sales process because people are already familiar with you. But that is a big investment that takes a lot of time to build that followership. That should not be your game plan as a startup. There are easier, cheaper, faster ways to acquire customers. And inbound content in general is a machine that takes a lot of momentum to get going, okay? It's a snowball. It's not going to get you results tomorrow. So let me ask you, which would you rather? A cold email that generates a meeting with a $30 million C-suite team immediately, or a 1-year commitment to generate blog content that may be ROI positive in the second year of investment? I think it's pretty simple, right? When you're in startup mode, you would much rather have a sales call than an investment that can theoretically pay off if you keep investing in it, if you keep doubling down on it. Now, this first example, the cold email to get a $30 million C-suite team, I did this, and I'm going to show you exactly how that was done. And I just want you to think about how ridiculously cheap it is. Okay, I pay $50 a month for this cold email tool. I bought a list, an email list that cost I think maybe $200, $250. And then I just run it automatically. I don't need to pay an SDR. I don't need to pay for ongoing ads. I don't need to invest in $500 blog posts or spend 3 hours writing some long blog content. I just run the cold email exactly to the people that I want to buy my product. And you can do it even cheaper than that. Okay, I bought a list. You can make your own list. You could just go grab a list from an association website of the people that you want buying your product and run the cold email campaign. It's cheap and it's effective and it leads immediately to sales. Unlike inbound content marketing where it's indirect, takes a lot of time. You're going to get a lot of people that are not qualified to use your product. Here with cold email, you can target exactly who you think will buy the product. Okay, so here's what my cold email looked like. It was all automated. I'm able to send this to thousands of people, send it to a couple hundred a day, and it just had a subject line, ideas and feedback for, and then after the for was the company name. And I said, hi, and then I'd put in first name as a variable in this cold email tool called Lemlist. I'm reaching out because I thought you might want some free advice. And then I established the credibility of myself as an individual, as a consultant. And then bam, I got a message from the CEO of this $30 million business say, yeah, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to have a meeting, CCs, the rest of the C-suite. We get in on the meeting. There, that's a sales call. That's how you generate sales. And it's all done automatically, this tool called Lemlist. I'm not an affiliate or anything. Use whatever cold email tool you want. Mailshake. Step one, simple email that's just first name as the or ideas and feedback for the company name. And then I put their first name in the greeting here. And then I send a step 2 email 5 days later. It's all fully automated. I just upload a cold list into there. Now, you're going to have some challenges if you're in business to consumer marketing. Don't worry. There's other ways you can do it when you're doing consumer cold emails. You can do message ads that are paid for. You can get into people's inboxes other way. I'm not telling you to do anything malicious here. And I want you to think about this for a second. I don't need a designer. I don't need a developer. I don't need to hire a copywriter. I just send a short email. It's got my photo. You don't even need your photo. And all I'm doing is getting people to respond to say, yes, I'm interested. That's how you generate sales quickly. Okay, another thing, companies will want to invest in office space. A lot of the time, this is because they're small. They want to be perceived as more credible. Don't do it. Why? If you sink that money into an office, now, okay, maybe it's necessary. Maybe there are nuances here where people need to walk into your office depending on what kind of startup you are. But if you're a consultant, if you're an e-commerce business, if you're pretty much anything, nobody cares about your fancy office space. It's just going to be a waste of money. Okay, let's focus on generating revenue and less on big capital expenditures like this. All right, another thing that I see is startups that become obsessed with automation and scalability before they've even proven that there's a proof of concept there, that they know that this can actually generate sales. So automation is great, and a lot of people, even one-person businesses, generate $1 million because they invest in automation. The problem I see is they'll invest tons of money into some automation software because they're talked into it, because a lot of the people that control the share of voice in the internet are software companies, and I'm in software marketing, so don't get me wrong. I'm not biased against software, but you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on some sort of automation software. Okay, you can hire people. Okay, you can pay somebody $5 an hour, $10 an hour, whatever. You can get them locally. You can get them on Fiverr. You can get them on Upwork. You can find them on Craigslist. I had tons of people in the Philippines working for me happily in the Philippines because I found them on Craigslist. They needed money. I needed workers. Bing, bam, boom. It's that easy. Now, when I lived in Norway, what I noticed was a lot of things were automated. You go to return your bottles for recycling. There's an automation machine. A lot of the change that's produced when you buy something was automated. And this was years ago, something like 10 years ago before this became mainstream. And the reason is because the labor costs are really high in Norway. Ridiculously high. Super expensive to hire people. So that's why they invested in these automation tools. But today we're working in a global market, okay? You can hire employees anywhere, and you don't have to hire them in places where labor is super expensive. So why not just get somebody to do the job instead of getting a machine to do the job? because automation machinery is more ROI positive the bigger you get, the more you've scaled. But in the beginning, it is more versatile, it is more agile to just get somebody to do the job, because there's going to be a lot of tweaking, there's going to be a lot of changes, there's going to be a lot of variability in what you're doing in the beginning, probably more custom tailored orders to customers in the beginning. Later, once you've scaled up, then start thinking about automation, because the benefits accrue more strongly when you have a large user base, a large customer base. So generally, what I'm saying here at a high level is that when you're a startup, you need to focus on the income statement. Income statement. Let's maximize sales, maximize revenue, minimize expenses, especially non-operational expenses. Big investments are often a very bad idea. When you're a large company or mid-sized company, things start to change. You're less interested in revenue, more interested in assets that are going to produce revenue efficiently in the long run. So there's a twist that happens as you grow, where you need to shift your mindset from sales to assets. And I'm just going to show you a few examples of what these look like. So in the beginning as a startup, and these are general rules, okay? There's going to be exceptions. I know people watching this, you're probably going to start resisting some of the things I'm saying, largely because there's a lot of propaganda out there that just wants you to spend money and time on things you don't need to. But if we take a look here, what are the things that generate sales? Okay, outbound demand generation. If you're in business to business and consumer marketing, it's outbound performance marketing. Things like lead gen forms. Okay, we have them on Facebook, we have them on LinkedIn. You can do very, very targeted ads on Twitter. You can do it on Quora. These types of things are going to get you results now rather than tomorrow. Pay-per-click advertising, very good at hitting people that are actively looking for a solution. They're in that buying mindset. It's going to generate sales quickly. The other thing that you can do, and I'm going to go into more detail on this later, is instead of building your own brand, you borrow other people's brands. You borrow their credibility, latch yourself onto them, associate with them, participate in their content to give you more credibility and to get you more visibility. Cold email, extremely cheap. Extremely efficient, extremely automated in a cheap way that doesn't require big investment, and get sales immediately. Now, then there's a big shift that happens when you're out of startup mode. You're at a large company. What matters now? It's less about sales. It's more about asset management. You've built up a brand, you've built up credibility, you've built up a customer list. Let's manage those assets. Let's manage those own channels. So now it's more about your branding. It's more about brand management. It's more about owned channels. It's about your website. It's about your podcast. It's about your big event that you've built up for your company. It's about awareness campaigns for branding on a wide scale. It's about entertainment. It's about, are we top of mind when the need arises? That's not important when you're a startup. You're not trying to hit people who may have a need in the future. You're going to be trying to hit people that have a need now. And if they don't, you can stimulate them so that they will respond now. Different when you're a big company. You're thinking longer time horizons, bigger scale. You're thinking inbound content machinery, and you're focusing a lot on research rather than just agile experimentation. So there's a big shift that happens. Don't get confused. Don't confuse what works for large companies with what's going to work for you now as a startup.